Padres Hot Tub is brought to you by the Padres Hot Tub Patreon community, where almost 400 people have come together now, putting their noggins together to create a rock garden in support of the Padres and in support of our little group. It's as low as $5 a month at patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub. And Chris, in these troubling times with the Padres tickling fourth place, feeling it on the back of their ankles, that we come together as a group. And I think this is when the community needs one another more than ever.
And you're going to find a voice that you can relate to in our watch parties, Craig, because there are folks that are full on, this team's never going to win another game. There's guys that, it's all okay. This is the most talented roster we've ever had. They're playing bad. It's going to be all right. So you're going to find a voice that resonates with your own in there. Like you said, it's nearly 400 people. So lots of different perspectives. And if the Padres are doing like they're doing right now, maybe bumming you out a little bit, we got other things to talk about. We got TV. We got golf. We got soccer. I added a fishing tab to the Discord this week. There's pictures of halibut. It took me 5 months, but I did it. Point is, it is a community. I'm getting to know people after just a few months. We're DMing, we're working things out. It's a lot of fun. So if you're like us and you're three thick-rimmed glasses guys that maybe life's kicking you a little bit, you'll find more on our Discord and in our family of patrons.
Hey, let's be clear. Twitter is a hellscape, and
Garbage.
tens of thousands of people deleted the app over the weekend off of their phone because it has just turned into an awful place to find community. You're looking for a place to find community. You're looking for a place to put your opinions and to ask your questions where you're going to get responses that aren't animals in blenders. And you can do that at no animals in blenders at patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub. We are a zero animal abuse area. Patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub. And that's just the Discord. You get free podcasts. You get ad-free podcasts. You get bonus podcasts. You get a chance to be part of our live recordings. Go to games with us and so much more. Patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub. Welcome to the Padres Hot Tub, everybody. Craig Elsten, Chris Reed, Raphie Cantor. We are back with you. We are recording on Monday afternoon, May 15th. It's May 15th. We are here.
The promised day.
The Ides of May.
All of the badness is in the back seat. We're going forward, baby. And if the Padres lose tonight, there's going to be hell to pay. Let me tell you. Hell to pay, because if you have been following along with our Padres Hot Tub show all the way back to our prediction podcast, then you know that literally I told you this was going to happen, and it happened so exactly to what I said, so obnoxiously exactly to what I said.
You said 2 games under 500.
That now they better bleep and turn this thing around today, or I'm pulling this station wagon over and we're heading home. Gentlemen, we've got a lot to talk about today. Chris Reed, how are you?
Dude, I'm doing great. I got great news, actually. I was very upset leaving Las Vegas yesterday. So I got on my father-in-law's app. Brad Keller happened to be a guy I identified last year as somebody who could help the Padres. Well, I bet on him to win today, Craig, because I think you're wrong. I think it starts tomorrow. I think Brad Keller might beat our boys tonight, so I bet on them, which of course means they're gonna win. So I did a favor for the Padres. I did what Bob Melvin couldn't Thursday night. I sent a message to the team with $15 on fucking Kansas City Royals.
Wow. Hedging your fandom. Hedging your
My-
existential fandom with a
My
Vegas bet.
identity.
Raphie, this was as bad a weekend, especially coming off the heels of a bad week and a Bob Melvin call out. This was basically our 0% expectation for the weekend, and they achieved it.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about the specifics of the Dodgers series and, hitting with runners in scoring position, walks versus strikeouts, all that stuff. So I'll save the goodies for that discussion. But, my overall feeling is that the Padres team is playing to like their 5th percentile possibility right now, basically. I don't think that the offense could really possibly be performing any worse if they even tried. And I think that the pitching is not, God-smacking incredible. It's not gobsmacking terrible. It's definitely leaves some room to be desired. But the pitching, honestly, is kind of holding a lot of things together at this point. So I don't know, man. I think we should just get into it and talk this thing out.
Yeah, as the show continues, we're going to explore one of our most explored topics in Padres Hot Tub podcast franchise history. Have we reached rock bottom? We're gonna pull out that old dusty case and blow it off the dust off the top and see what's inside. We're digging out the concernometer, and we're gonna go big at the end of the show on the concernometer, including from each of us our single biggest concern for the Padres franchise right now. That is all still to come, but we start by getting swept out of Los Angeles. And the numbers were absolutely brutal in this series. Each game had that obnoxious feeling, right? Friday night, the big hit by Kim after an early 2-0 deficit. You're back in it. And then, boom, back-to-back home runs by the big boys, Betts and Freeman. Game gets out of reach. Next day, great pitching, LA. Game gets out of reach. Sunday, well, and of course, Saturday's game, an early lead, a top of the first 1-0 lead, and you're just going, just hang on. I even said it in our Discord.
It's your fault.
Hold the lead. Just get 1-0 across to the second inning. And instead, it's a blue pit. It's a 2-out blue pit on a wrong way read, and then it's a 2-strike absolute cookie to JD Martinez hanging in the center of the zone from Joe Musgrove for a 3-run homer. That game's out of reach. Sunday, Padres just get shut out by the freaking cat man. Gonsolin does it. I mean, David's son, Ryan Weathers was starting. I didn't have high hopes for this game. I'm going to be very honest with you, but 4-0 wound up being the type of result that you didn't even want to discuss, write home about, consider again. I'd rather, guys, I mean, we can talk about some specifics of the individual games, but I think the series as a whole tells a story. The Padres walked 4 times in 3 games against LA. 3 of those came on Sunday. And yes, LA is a more strike-throwing pitching staff than the Kansas City Royals or several other teams in baseball. Yes, you saw some of the best pitchers on the team, whether it's May, who was commanding the zone, Urias, who always commands the zone, Gonsolin, who generally always commands the zone. But these aren't our Padres, guys. 4 walks, 23 Ks. At no point in any of these games was the starting pitcher of LA under a pitch count troubled situation where it's like, oh, pitch count's getting up in the 4th inning. Never was that the case. And I think you are seeing increasingly, game by game by game in this rut, worse and worse at bats being taken by the San Diego Padres. They heard for a whole week, you guys are too passive. You got to get up there and swing the bat. And they're swinging the bat at pitchers, and they're making outs on the 1st and 2nd pitch.
That's all fair, dude. You know, a lot of criticism has gone to the team when they watch a fastball down the middle on a 0-0 count and then the pitcher's ahead. I'd argue it's way worse to watch them swinging at these fringy pitches that have expecting batting averages, sub 200. And then you just see weak contact go to a team that knows how to field their positions to a man. It keeps you out of ball games. It's no good. And, to go, I don't want to tease what my thing is going to be later with concern, but spoiler alert, the walks has a lot to do with it. If nobody's on base, home runs don't mean much for you. We saw a couple solo shots this series that ultimately didn't help them win, and not much when guys were on base. So without spoiling in, you nailed it. They're not being themselves. They're not playing like they want to. They're not approaching at bats like they want to. Julio Urias seemed like he could have pitched 15 innings in his start. Like when he got pulled, I was kind of stunned. I get saving the guy, but he was at like 70 something pitches. I want to say, the team was not being competitive. That we got to see something better going forward.
Raphie, the big number is the most obvious number. This team is right now hitting as badly as you could pretty much hit collectively in runners in scoring position situations. Right now, the club through 41 games is hitting 198, 286, 344 for a 630 OPS and an 81 OPS plus with runners in scoring position. Anytime a runner is at second or third base, that's how the team has collectively hit for the entire season. 198, 286, 344. This weekend, they went 2 for 19. They have had 16 games, Raphie. I heard AC tell this stat on a radio interview this afternoon. 16 offers with runners in scoring position this year, which has led to 6 shutouts in 41 games. I would have expected those to be season-long numbers, like 10% of the games, 16 games, you're not going to get a hit with runners in scoring position. Maybe half of that, you're going to get shut out for the year. They're at those season totals on May 15th.
Yeah, and I mean, you said like this is about as bad as you can hit. This is historically the worst performance with runners in scoring position ever. That's not like there's no qualifiers there. There was a tweet from AJ Cassavell this weekend that this was before Sunday's game. This was on Saturday, where he said, and I'm quoting him now, 3/4 of the season to go, obviously, but the Padres' current, at the time, it was 203 average with runners in scoring position, is the lowest for any big league team since the 1969 Padres hit 200 with runners in scoring position in the franchise's inaugural season. That number is now down to 198. So there has never been a team that's ever hit worse with runners in scoring position over a full season than what the Padres are doing right now. Obviously, like AJ said, we have a quarter of the season down, 3/4 to go, but it's historically bad. I also wanted to talk about something that you mentioned in terms of Julio Urias and the Dodgers' approach to us, because we talked about this on Pods Above Replacement in our April offense review, which is that the Padres aren't swinging the bats. And the Dodgers, a very smart team, not breaking any news there. And especially after playing us one series in San Diego a couple weeks ago, they then came to this series and they basically said, we are going to straight up challenge these guys. And that's exactly what they did. Their zone percentage, the number of pitches that they throw in the zone, was 53.2% this weekend, and the league average is 49.1%. So it's a 4% difference, which doesn't feel like a lot, but to me, it's enough to say, okay, at least this is an effort that was being made. There's so many pitches, obviously, in a given game, in a given series, that to me, you don't have to also look any further than what was happening at the bottom of the lineup. So at the bottom of the lineup, those numbers are incredibly exaggerated. So for Adam Engel, Rougned Odor, Austin Nola, and Brett Sullivan, players who did not get a lot of plate appearances, but still constitute the 8-9 spots in our order for much of that weekend, the zone percentage was up to 80%. So they were just laying pitches
Right.
in there and basically saying, "You guys go and hit it." Julio Urias, over the course of his entire start, threw 60.5% strikes. So, whereas, Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin and a lot of the other pitching staff were down towards that 50% average, which is a more of towards league average. But to me, the strategy for the Dodgers was clear this weekend. Throw them the pitches, make them hit it, make them swing the bat. And I think especially like as we get to talking later in the episode about the bullpen and stuff, we can talk more about some of the league strategy. But to me, like that's the most worrying thing. This is a team that was making its money on being passive, and when a team exposes that weakness, they get punished for it and punished for it in a very big way. Craig.
Yes. And I think, you really hit it. There are so many pitchable spots right now in the Padres order that it makes for easy going for pitchers who can command the zone. Now, you have to give a guy like Urias credit for pouring it in there. But at the same time, a guy like May, that's where I get to approach, because May will usually have one or two pitches in every single appearance that look like strikes and sail out of the zone, because he's got so much horizontal movement on his two-seam fastball. And, May was good. May was really good in both starts against San Diego. So in no way do I want to minimize that. He's a top prospect who's turning into a top pitcher. He's coming into his own. This is kind of that year he should step forward and become a regular starter for the Dodgers, and not a kind of sideshow that he's been the last couple of years. Having said all that, when your approach is wrong against Dustin May, it's that one pitch in the at-bat that's going to screw the whole at-bat, because it turns 2-1 into 1-2, or it turns 1-0 into 0-1. When you let him off the hook on one pitch and you make that the chase pitch, that's when he's no longer a pitcher that you can wear down. He's a pitcher that's just going to flat out dominate. And that's what he's done in two starts against the Padres. He's flat out dominated them. Kim came up with one huge hit against Dustin May. And other than that, it's been straight up domination. So I think they're linked. I think all of this, is linked. And the team is, as usual, when you're struggling, they're having a real hard time getting out of the gate. We talked about it, either falling behind early, or if they take an early lead, immediately surrendering that lead. That's what happens when you're in a losing rut. And, it's what made the Saturday game, I think, so frustrating, because here's Adam Engel, Chris, starting in center field, batting ninth. He's a player that really isn't of major league pedigree, hasn't been for some time. The Padres signed him to be a fringe player. Now he's on the roster. He's starting. It was a tough play. It's not Rougned Odor trying the Jeter jump throw off the top of second base in Minnesota. Okay. That was like an egregiously bad play that helped cost the team a game. In this case, Max Muncy, afternoon game, high sky. You're starting deep. Guy takes a full swing. Ball comes in flat, short ball. It's a tough play. I heard Tony Gwynn Jr. talking about it, a guy who played center field. That's a tough play in a high sky. It's a hard play to make. Nonetheless, Adam Engel, if he has any value on this team at all, it's supposed to be plus defense, that you put him in and you get plus defense. That ball dropped in. Martinez hits the home run. Of course, Engel absolutely did jack shit at the plate. And it was just, to me, Chris, it was very emblematic of where we are right now. There are some fringe guys, we'll talk about them more as the podcast continues, that are on this team that should not be on this team and are directly contributing to losses.
That statistic that Raphie just said is still blowing my mind. At 8 and 9, getting 80% strikes in the zone. Major league pitchers have so much movement on their pitches that's hard to do just doing it, just throwing it up there with nobody on it. How much higher would that percentage be if it was me in the batter's box, Craig?
Right.
Like another 10% at most? Like that shows absolutely no fear of these guys, and they're playing for a Major League Baseball team that wants to be the best one in the league. That is absolutely astounding. Adam Engel at the time of his signing didn't make a ton of sense. The Padres have Jose Azocar, who is a middling defensive player, maybe slightly above average. but at least hits the ball with the bat occasionally. He doesn't hit it far, but he puts bat on ball. Adam Engel, as we've discussed, is the best cricket player on the Padres team. If there were no lines for him to put the ball in between, he'd have some hits, probably not a ton of them. He's on the team to catch the ball in the outfield. And if you're benching the guy who has been labeled the best defensive center fielder 2 out of the last 3 years, to put him out there, you're going to look stupid. And that's what they did. They looked stupid at the very beginning of the game. And this is it's one thing, Martinez crushes the hanging slider. We've seen that all this year. Padres pitchers make have a soft contact hit, have something go wrong, and then their defense doesn't back them up. They don't bail them out, and that becomes the difference in these games, these close games. They all do feel the same, dude. It feels like Groundhog Day. It feels like they're in every game, kinda, but a 1-0 lead feels like a 3-run deficit, and a 2-run deficit feels like they've lost. That's not baseball. That's not the reality of it. It's just how these games feel to watch. They haven't been fun, man. And unless, yeah, and when that's happening as a baseball team, you make moves. You make moves to clear out the rubbish at the bottom of the roster.
Yeah, we're going to get there for sure. But one thing that should not be ignored, Raphie, is that Padres starting pitching is doing quite well during this streak in May. Just about everyone is doing what they want to do. I think Joe Musgrove right now stands out as the number one underperformer in the rotation. And that's a guy that, while I know in your season prediction, you said he might have a step back this year and step back more to average Joe, he's gone beyond that. Right now, he's below average Joe. You expect regression to the mean at this point for Joe Musgrove, much like when he was like 6-0 at this point last year with a 1.5 ERA. You expected a little bit of regression to the mean, but the starters are really doing the job, and it's been of note that a bullpen that was taxed pretty heavily, including certain players being taxed extremely heavily, has started to show signs of wilting. Tim Hill's like 11 or 12 innings pitched above where he was at this time last year. Brent Honeywell obviously had no pitching last year at all. Steven Wilson is like 8 or 9 innings above where he was last year. And those are guys that you can go back and look as losing pitchers over the course of this 1-7 stretch.
Yeah. So I know I'm like I do the analytics podcast and everything, but I'm gonna revert back a little bit to some boomer baseball for a moment and just talk about ERA, because I just want to illustrate some cold hard facts about the Padres pitching staff right now. Padres pitching staff in May has put up a 2.61 ERA. No qualifiers. That's it. 2.61 ERA. It's the second best rate in the league. They're tied with the Dodgers, actually, about that. The bullpen in May has put up a 2.25 ERA, also the second best in the league. Okay. So, I have a lot of trouble when I hear people talk about the bullpen's doing this, bullpen's doing that. They're not coming through and everything like that. They are being put in an impossible situation game after game after game, which is that they're always coming in with the game on the line, either when they're trying to protect a razor thin lead or trying to keep us in a game that we invariably never catch up to. So, and by the way, the peripherals, stop looking there if you want to feel good about the pitching, because the peripherals are not good. Like we're giving up home runs. Our FIP is not good at all. Like we are just stop there. But I tend to not want to even talk about the pitching right now in general, because it's not the issue with the team. It's like, it's really not. It
No, you're
starts
right.
and ends with the offense. So I know Bob Melvin, actually, when he, gave his post-game talk in Minnesota, that did wonders for the team.
Yeah.
No fault to Bob on that. I'm glad he did what he did. But he specifically said, our pitchers are being put in positions where they can't perform. And so he knows it. I think everyone knows it. And I think that they're the one team with the. I'm wearing this jacket right now, guys. I forgot to mention this at the beginning of the show. I hope you're watching on YouTube. We put effort into these edits and everything. So subscribe, like, comment, do all that stuff. but I'm wearing this jacket because this is what we're playing like right now, guys. I could close my eyes and wake up and think the 2005 Padres are where it's a team that's pitching incredibly, doing well, has no offense. One guy's hitting good at a time. Everyone else is a zero. So those are the vibes right now that I'm feeling.
I want to put some positivity out there with individual performances. Raphie just did, the May performances as a whole from the pitching staff. The last few weeks, Darvish and Michael Wacha are among the top 30 pitchers in Major League Baseball. Fangraphs roster resource has them ranked 20 for Michael Wacha and 27 for Darvish. That'll play all year long. As soon as these guys get the tiniest bit of support, there's going to be games to be won.
Yeah, and again, we're kind of starting to transition from the specific to the general here, and we'll continue to do so. But many aspects of this club remain solid. The defense remains really solid. I heard Darren Smith ask AC, and it sounded like a real troll question to start his interview on Monday. Like, what do the Padres do well? And to his credit, Kevin straight up said they play defense and they pitch pretty well. Those aspects are good. We know where the weak spots are defensively for the team. It's behind the plate. It's in left field. Everywhere else is really solid. We know that the pitching staff is good. Are they missing elite arms in the bullpen? Abso-fucking-lutely, they are missing elite arms in the bullpen. Innings that should be pitched by Robert Suarez and Drew Pomeranz are being pitched by Steven Wilson and Tim Hill. And those guys aren't as good as the promise of the other guys. And as a result, there's a little bit of leakage there. There's too much stress on your secondary arms. But it's the hitting. 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 It's going to be the hitting. It's been the hitting. And if it doesn't get better, it's going to be because of the hitting. And much like 2021, when the pitching fell apart, it was because the hitting wasn't there to back the team up. So much of this gets spackled over with solid performances from the top 5 guys in this lineup, but it's not there right now. Tatis is hitting. Soto is killing it. Juan Soto week on Padres Hot Tub lit a fire under Juan Soto. He's been absolutely brilliant and everything that you want. But Raphie, I wanted, before we transition out, Manny after the game on Sunday pretty much said the regular stuff. We're just going to keep doing what we got to do. He did admit, yes, we're pressing. We want to win a bleeping game. And he said, hey, we'll come out tomorrow and we're going to do the same stuff and we might lose, but we might win. On one level, I appreciate that. And of course, you're never going to hear anything else from Manny. And he talked about the baseball cards again. What the numbers on the back of the card and what the number's going to be on the back of the card. As of Thursday's postgame show, Manny was starting to hit more like Manny for 2 weeks, Rafe. He went hitless this weekend. He hit into a critical double play on Friday, one of 2 that he wrapped into that game. And just frankly, Manny has been horrible offensively through 41 games.
Yeah, and just to kind of go back to that stat I was talking about earlier about the zone percentage and who the Padres were challenging, it goes Engel or Odor, Nola, Sullivan. Next on the list, Manny Machado. Manny Machado had 62.5% of pitches thrown in the zone. And to give you a sense of, kind of the other extreme, Fernando Tatis Jr. saw 42.5% of pitches in the zone this weekend. And to me, that's not an accident. I know we're working with a small sample size of a weekend, but a 20% difference like that is saying that they're not as afraid to try and go after Manny, which is not the words that you want to be saying about the guy that you just gave a $350 million contract to. Do I think this is temporary? Yes. Do I think that Manny will hit like this forever? Of course not. That's not who he is. That's not how it works. But I think when you're performing this poorly, and I can talk about Manny or I can talk about that as a whole, and he admitted it becomes mental. Like it really becomes mental, and it becomes like you're kind of going up there every time trying to provide that slump buster. And until you provide that slump buster, you're going to be pressing to provide that every time. And that is just kind of that vicious cycle. So I don't know what you want him to be saying at this point, because like I don't think Manny is the type of guy that's going to be super I don't know what the right word I'm trying to look for is. I think he can be humble, but I think, he's the guy who says I'm Manny fucking Machado. And I don't think
Right.
he's the same guy that's gonna come back and, be at the complete other opposite end of that spectrum. So it doesn't surprise me that he said what he said and just kind of thrown out the usual platitudes out there. But it does still feel wrong in the sense when it's like he's got an 81 WRC plus on the year. That's what Trent Grisham put up last year. Okay. The
Right.
192 hitting Trent Grisham put up an 81 WRC plus, and that's what Manny's hitting like right now. So it's a lot.
All right. Last thing, and I'll say this very, very briefly. If you want to hear me say a lot more about it, go back to last week's podcast. I just want to note the reason why organizationally you don't do stupid shit like make fun of the legacy ball player on the team that you can't beat because you beat them one time. All right. The reason organizationally you don't do that, and I said this last week, I said if there's even a 5%, 2% chance that what you do could blow back on the field and affect the win-loss of the club, then it's the worst possible thing you could do because there's absolutely no upside. And I get that the Padres were in that happy, floaty moment last Friday when they beat the Dodgers. And it's so unfortunate because when you do things like crying Kershaw meme on your scoreboard by you, then today, when I get the Athletic Weekly Monday Roundup email, the top headline on the email is "The Kershaw Curse is Real." And the story is poking fun at the Padres because the Padres are now 1-7 since they did that. All right. And I'll say it again. The Padres never felt more like the Ontario Fury than they did this last week. At San Diego Sockers, we've got this team Ontario Fury, and we beat the shit out of them every single year. Every year. We'll beat them 5 out of 6 games, 6 out of 6 games. But that one time they beat us, they'll make 14 videos. They literally dance and sing in the locker room like they just won the championship. They do a victory lap. They go absolutely crazy, and then we go beat them 3 or 4 times. And every time we go, do you remember when they were like singing in the locker room after they finally beat us when we had beaten them 8 times in a row? And then they acted like a bunch of assholes. And it's just this thing that just sticks in the back of your head. And every time you're like, I mean, we already wanted to beat them, but now like we really want to fucking beat them, and the Padres have looked like bitches 5 games in a row against the Dodgers. They've lost 5 games in a row to the Dodgers. They're 1-5 with only 7 games left in the series. They have virtually lost the season series two series in. It's almost over. They basically have to run the table through not to lose the season series now to LA. And whatever you think about correlation and causation, that this is just like a completely irrational discussion, that's why you don't do it. You don't do it to avoid stupid shit like this. You don't do it to avoid being caught in a rhetorical corner where you have to try and argue your way out. Well, no, it actually wasn't that big a deal because, no. So don't ever do it again. I understand. And by the way, I put out some bad information, we didn't know. And we mentioned our buddy Jeff up there. He does not have the call on that. There was a new first-year person in Padres Productions that was making that call. And I don't know if they're still there. They probably are. But it was a really, really big mistake as you go back and look at it. Okay. Let's get into the bigger meat. Again, May 15 is here. What does that mean? It does mean the schedule gets a lot easier for the San Diego Padres. Now, we're supposed to be the beast on the schedule. We're not supposed to be worried about strength of schedule, but even good teams usually play 500 or a little under when they're playing nothing but other good teams. So getting into an easier, softer part of the schedule has got to be good news. But I want to get to more general stuff right now, guys. And the lack of connectivity in this lineup is a real concern for me. We've spoken throughout the offseason about just imagine what it's going to be like when Tatis and Machado and Soto and Bogarts are batting one after another, and they're feeding off each other. And what are opposing pitchers going to do? And the answer has been they're going to have Tatis get on base, and then they're going to get all the rest of the guys out. Because Machado is 2 for 19 this season with Tatis on base. Like, they are not clicking. They are not coming together. They are not connecting as a lineup. And it's jarring to me. It's the opposite of what you would have expected.
Sure, it is. Juan Soto doesn't want to hit third, Craig, or Xander Bogaerts doesn't want to hit third. Juan Soto doesn't want to hit wherever he doesn't want to
Second.
hit.
He doesn't want to hit second.
Oh, he doesn't want to hit second. So all these guys have their little preferences and they're, the big four, so they get to decide things. I'm kind of sick of that, for one. I kind of want to see a lineup. If Manny needs to bat fifth or sixth to get him going, let's do that. But it doesn't help when you put Jake Cronenworth second. Jake Cronenworth the last 7 days. Let's see, 342 in Major League Baseball. Now the worst, and just to get right to it, is Trent Grisham. Worst on the team, 354 power breaking. That's based on performance the past 7 days. None of these guys are hot right now. They're playing the worst almost possible. Guys, the Padres starting nine, their main nine, if you want to talk about their performance the last 7 days, they're averaging 234th in Major League Baseball. Just for perspective, like what they're getting out of their lineup, Eric Hosmer's 254 the last 7 days. So we have 6-7 Hosmers on our team right now. Juan Soto is like 6, I want to say. So he's one of the best players in the game. From Juan Soto, the next guy's Tatis. He's at 112. There's no production. Like, sure, connectivity, but it doesn't help if they're all doing bad at bats. You can't connect 7 bad players with 2, and expect to get anywhere.
Well, and stratomatically, Raphie, you would never build the lineup the way it's being built right now, because Tatis is not reaching base. Tatis's walk rate right now, I looked it up earlier this morning. I'll go double check it again, but I think it was 6% for the year so far, and he's double digits for his career. So he's right now, having come back, very aggressive. We see him generally swinging at the first pitch almost every single at bat. So he's performing like a number 4 hitter right now. A guy that's trying to more Castellanos-esque, right? Trying to do damage when he's at the plate and not worrying about his plate discipline. Bogarts has lost the plot entirely. Machado, we've discussed his ups and downs. And Soto, of course, is the guy that if you were doing strat, you'd lead him off because he's the one guy who's getting on base all the time. Instead, we're batting him 4th, where his on base is getting up in front of all the struggling players on the team. When you start with things that you can change right away, I'm sorry, and I know he's hitting well there. Juan Soto batting 4th is bad for the lineup. It's bad for the lineup. Unless you have Carpenter and Cruz, Kim, Grisham, catcher hitting, Soto's getting on for nobody. And that's what's happening. No, that's it.
I remember last year where we exalted having Jurickson Profar as leadoff hitter because we were like, wow, this guy sees a lot of pitches and he puts our lineup in a good position where they're coming to the plate where he's, he might work a walk, he might do all this stuff, but he's going to give the guys a good look at the pitcher before anyone steps up to the plate. Now, imagine if we had Juan Soto, and it turns out we do. We have a guy whose on-base percentage across the year, like even given the early struggles, he now has a 403 on-base percentage. Like it's insane. It's wacky. It's wild. And we're completely nuking it. And this is something else that you had in the menu, Craig, but DH has now gone to like less than a 0. And the DH has been hitting 5th or 6th in the lineup, depending on the day. And so that's who's immediately succeeding Juan Soto after he gets on base. And just to put some numbers to it, in the month of May, Matt Carpenter has a WRC plus of 14 in May. Okay. He's slashing 150, 227, 150. Nelson Cruz has a WRC plus of -47. Dude, I gotta be honest, I know WRC plus pretty well. I'm still not entirely clear on the negative stuff. It feels like it's dividing by zero a little bit, like it's like this shouldn't work out. But it's he's slashing 105, 105, 105 with 0 walks and a K rate of 31.6%. Okay. So that position is I think we often talk about Austin Nola or Trent Grisham or whatever, like as a black hole at times. Like that is quite literally in the month of May, a black hole, and it's going directly after our on base generational machine. So no, this is not a lineup that is built optimally.
41 game splits are the first time, and we've talked about this before, right? It's the first time I'm kind of even willing to throw this stuff out there. And even you guys on Pods Above Replacement, Raphie, right? Like when you're in April, like, oh, listen, it's April. Like, let's throw a half shaker of salt on all of this analysis. So now we're down to like a quarter shaker of salt that we have to put on this. And I think you start to, if nothing else, you get to see trends. And I've got 3 trends for this team right now that are frankly bizarre and I think are completely undiscussed. All right. Here's number 1. I'm just going through the splits of this club. Did you know, listening audience and co-hosts combined, how bad the Padres have been against right-handed pitching this year? It's dramatic. So far this season against lefties, the Padres as a team are slashing 258, 323, 431 for a 754 OPS, 116 OPS plus. Against righties, all righties, 209, 305, 364, 669 OPS, 87 OPS plus. We've been shit against right-handed pitching. You mostly face right-handed pitching. Padres have been really bad against righties. That's number 1, okay? Put a pin in it. We'll come back. We'll discuss it. We talk about the lack of connectivity in the lineup. When you go position by position through the batting order, it is as clear as a bell why this team can't score. As clear as a ringing bell, ringing in your mind. Church bells, all right? The church bells of Notre Dame. Why this team can't score. Number 1 spot in the order, 798 OPS. Number 2 spot, 607. 188 average for anyone batting second this year. So Soto gets there, he can't hit for shit. Machado bats second, he can't hit for shit. Put Cronenworth there, he stops hitting. Nobody is hitting in the number 2 spot for the Padres. So every time you get that good spark, 3 and 4 are doing pretty good. 806 cleanups, 899 OPS. Number 5 spot, 583. 583. So, okay. Maybe this inning, we got a couple guys on 3, 4, dead spot in the 5 hole for the Padres. 6 is doing good, 815. 7th, 597. And of course, 789. 597, 651, 475 is what the Padres have put out of their 9 spot this year, whoever is hitting there. So, of course, they're not hitting. Like, good, bad, good, bad, good, bad, bad. Like, how do you string a rally together? And what is the problem for the Padres? They're not stringing a rally together. They're not getting hits with RISP. All right, I got one more. This one actually blew my mind. All right? Because we think about the weak spots on this team. And of course, catcher is the weakest weak spot on the team. The Padres catchers collectively have slashed 169, 238, 277, a 515 OPS, a 48 OPS plus. I'll give each of you one guess. What is the second worst performing position on the Padres lineup?
Center field.
Well, I'm going to say right field because before we had half a season without Tatis.
Okay. You're both wrong. by a mile. All
First
right.
base.
First base is shockingly bad. Did you know, whether it be Jake Cronenworth or Matt Carpenter or Brandon Dixon, that actually, by average, the worst hitting position on the Padres is first base. Padres first basemen are hitting 158 this year with one home run.
Craig, maybe that's what happens when you make your all-star second baseman who you sign the extension to your first baseman. Maybe that's exactly what friggin' happens.
And by the way, the second base position is hitting 264, 338, 458 with a 796 OPS, 128 OPS plus. 546 OPS for Padres first baseman this year. Padre first basemen are slugging 259.
Oh my God.
259. That's right? Right? So
that's the only thing you can do.
It's shocking. No, that's shocking. You were right. I was like, when you were to start talking about the catcher statistics, I'm like, how is he blown away by this? He knows catchers are terrible. That's truly shocking about first base.
It's as bad as it could possibly be.
Yeah.
It's honestly like, we thought we dodged a bullet not signing Jose Abreu. Like, Jose Abreu has literally been better than this and has hit the same number of homers. And he's terrible. He's unplayably terrible.
I'd just like to point out Alfonso Rivas is slugging 600 at El Paso. That's all. He's a first baseman, by the way.
Yeah.
He plays that position.
So that it's stunning. It's stunning how bad this Padres team has been with everybody that's on the first sack. And I think it definitely leads to a discussion about Jake Cronenworth and how, the gloves look good at first base, but he's hitting like an absolute cipher there.
I looked this up the other day, so I got to get to it, but he has looked good. He's passed the eye test for sure, but his outs above average is below the league average. I want to say his outs above average is like 50 or 46 here. I'll get it in just a second here. So the metrics are 44 outs above average. So we're loving it at the eye test. We love seeing those scoops on double play throws from center field, but the computer doesn't like it. Modern defensive, how we rate how players are playing, don't like how he's playing right now.
And here's the numbers. I just want to put the fine point to it. As a first baseman so far this year, Jake Cronenworth, 144 plate appearances, is hitting 170 with a 301 on base and a 280 slugging percentage, a 580 OPS. He has one home run. He has an OPS plus of 54. And as a second baseman, 22 plate appearances, he is slashing 476, 500, 857 for a 1357 OPS and a 285 OPS plus. Obviously, one sample is much larger than the other. But Jake Cronenworth's seamless transition to first base has been anything but. He is hitting the worst of his career. It is his fourth consecutive year where the numbers are worse than the year before. And it's cause for great concern, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say this, but I'm getting kind of Will Myers flashbacks, where Will Myers became the player that it was like, well, we'll just put him anywhere. You know, he could play first base, or he could play right field, or he could play center field, or he could play third base. Remember that experiment? Like, and it just goes to show with the way that Cronenworth's hitting at second base at his beloved position versus how he's hitting at first base, that there is an element of that, of players like wanting to feel comfortable. The thing about outs above average, I will say about this, is that for first basemen, they don't really take into account like scoops and stuff like that, which is somewhere that we actually have seen Cronenworth excel. We do have the lowest number of errors committed from the first base position, which I know errors are like a kind of whatever stat, but to go back to outs above average, this is like really painful. to say, but
Say it. I think I know what you're looking at.
out
Say
of
it.
qualified first baseman, Jake Cronenworth ranks 27th in outs above average, ranked 18th. Eric Hosmer.
Yep, that's there it is. That's what I thought. Yep.
And I do think also there's a little bit of I know that there's a name for this effect, and I can't remember what it is. There's a little bit of like moving the goalposts when it comes to first baseman, where we were like had Stockholm syndrome, or whatever the opposite of Stockholm syndrome is. We were so stuck in Eric Hosmer land for so long that we now have like a mildly competent first baseman who's like scooping balls and everything like that. And we're like, oh my God, he is an Adonis. When are we going to build him the statue at first base? You know? And when in reality, I think that there's a good number of first basemen who could, play like at least a serviceable first base. But the point that I think you're trying to make, Craig, and we're all saying is like, this is the number one premium defensive position in baseball. And we are getting our absolutely worst offensive performance from it. And it's also a place where you can sign theoretically like cheap bats, like for instance, someone like CJ Crone, who's also performing better, someone like Ty France, who is also playing better defensively from an outs above average standpoint, to come in and fill that hole, because theoretically you should be able to put anyone at first base. And so the fact that we're taking someone who had a good thing going and putting him out of position to try and fit the needs of what like a Stars and Scrubs model.
They've just got too many shortstops. Like he's the lowest of the shortstops, so he gets to play first base.
Yeah, and look, you signed Xander Bogaerts to be such a good offensive shortstop that he is overpowering some of the positions that are underperforming. And you're like, well, yeah, our first baseman's below average, but our shortstop is so far above average that it makes up for it. But it hasn't. It really hasn't. And Bogaerts has been about 20% above average at shortstop offensively, whereas we're twice as bad as the average first baseman and more than twice as bad as the average catcher in Major League Baseball this year. So the dead spots are really dead, Raphie.
Yeah, just to shout this out, because John Percoda and I were the number one critics of this. Xander Bogaerts is currently leading the lead in outs above average at shortstop. Like he's actually playing an incredible shortstop so far. So even though he's certainly taking a step back at the plate in May, he is providing that defensive value currently to kind of make up for that. The issue is when we start to expand the sample size and see what happens over the course of the year and see if he can keep this up. So that's something that I will certainly be watching, but I want to give credit where credit is due.
All right. I want to wrap up with potential remedies, potential do now type moves. So let's get to the concernometer. Because I feel like that keeps us on a narrative track. The concernometer is a regular Padres hot tub bit where we will talk about anything that bothers us and we will put it on the concernometer from 0 to 10 and see where it lands. Before we wheel out the meter, though, with all the bleeps and the bloops and the needle that moves and you get nervous, the New York Times needle that gave us all anxiety on a particular Tuesday in November in 2016. I want to start with more of a thought experiment and something that maybe grounds us in what we're doing. So I'd like to know whether it's small, big, whether it's now or it's meta. And we'll go right around the horn. I'll go Chris, Raphie, and then me. What's your biggest concern for the Padres right now, for the franchise? What is your biggest concern?
This one's really hard to quantify. There's no, fan graphs number for it, but chemistry, friggin' vibes, man. If the top four of our team don't like each other, I'm not saying they do. I'm not saying this is what it is. I just look at 2021 when a team that had clicked for 2/3 of the season all of a sudden stopped and collapsed and fell apart. I wouldn't call myself an athlete, but I've played plenty of sports. I've got my softball jersey on right now. I couldn't hit for 2.5 years, but something clicked on me this year and now I'm hitting again. I feel like that's gonna happen for our team. Like I feel like guys will eventually find things. and go well. But my nightmare as a Padres fan are these guys, the three that we have locked up for a decade with most of the team's resources. What if they just don't like each other? What if they just don't gel? What if there's no connectivity? And there's not enough slack in the line for the team to be able to be nimble with their adjustments and whatever it is. Because then you're looking at a top heavy behemoth that if it never gets off the ground, if it's the spruce goose and it flies once for 200 yards and then goes to a museum, it gets pointed at as something that was like, oh, cool, look what they built, but it never did anything.
Spruce Goose, little Long Beach love there. Used to go to the Spruce Goose Museum right next to the Queen Mary. So shout out that. Google it if you don't know. And if you never watched the Howard Hughes movie, that was pretty good too.
Give me the blueprints.
Raphie, your biggest concern for the Padres?
Yeah, similar lines to Chris on this one, of sort of a unquantifiable sort of thing. I just feel like, if you remember in the end of 2021, when the team was collapsing, there was an article that was put out in The Athletic that was co-written by Dennis Lin and Ken Rosenthal that was kind of talking about the inner circle around AJ Preller and the way that AJ Preller runs the organization. And it was a highly critical article. And it was basically like, that there's a lot of yes people that are around and there's not a lot of dissent. And, things it's a small circle, it's a small group and everything. And they're basically done a certain way. And, we're not going to know, what the extent of the analytics are on the team, how big the R&D staff is. There are certain things that we can know, but just kind of like what the allocation of resources are, and, where the team is scientifically in comparison to other teams. But it's something that feels institutional. And it feels like at the core of who is, running the ship right now. And there's a Twitter account called Swing Graphs that kind of takes some proprietary data and they put out a statistic that encompasses swing path. And at the top of the list is the Dodgers, and up there are, the Giants are up there, the Astros are up there, the Mariners are up there, the Orioles are up there, the Twins are those are your top 6, Braves closely behind. The Padres are dead last behind the Oakland Athletics by this proprietary metric. And, that doesn't feel accidental to me. There's a lot of analytics that come out and you see these kind of similar things. And teams get reputations for a reason. That the Dodgers are a smart team. Oh, the Giants are a smart team. It's because people talk and they push the boundaries. And they devote resources and time and manpower and everything to trying to find out new things about the sport. And AJ Preller is, I would say, something a savant at scouting. And that's borne out by, the talent that he's brought in, his, both internationally and domestically. And that's basically the thing that's been the lifeblood of the organization in a way, because it doesn't feel like much else has kind of gone in the way of what you would think in terms of the model of how you would set up a baseball team given this amount of resources. So for me, again, that's one of those like unanswerable questions, is like, where are the Padres in terms of their proprietary information, and is that going to get better? But that is my biggest concern.
All right, I'm going to go to something slightly more specific, but it does speak to general team dynamic as well. In 2021, when this team collapsed, and you just talked about the think piece, we talked about the front office, we evaluated a lot of things. You had the feeling that the next 2 years were going to be so important because at the end of 2023, the Padres had a number of players that could theoretically no longer be Padres. And while that was also somewhat of an abiding concern, it was also a potential pivot point. Like, well, we're doing this, and if it doesn't work at the end of 2023, there's an opportunity to revamp and reshape what we're doing. Maybe halfway through 2022, it probably felt that same way. And then the Padres traded for Juan Soto. And then it became a very concrete, well, between here and 2024, the Padres have this window, and they've got to jam everything they can inside this window. And then after that, there's an opportunity for perhaps some flexibility and for the team to, if they need to change a direction, that they could potentially change a direction. Then the team caught fire in September, beat the Dodgers beat the Mets in the playoffs. Let's not forget that. That was a big series. Beat the Mets in the playoffs, beat the Dodgers in the playoffs, made it to the NL Championship Series. And at that point, there became more of a fear. Like, well, we got to do this, but also we got to keep this together. 2023 stopped being a pivot point, and it became like, we got to lock stuff in before we get to the spot where things could start leaving because nothing but positive momentum, right? Nothing but forward momentum now. We're the Padres. We're the team of forward momentum. My biggest concern for the San Diego Padres is that in February of 2023 and early March of 2023, that perhaps this team got a little bit emotional. Perhaps this front office got a little bit emotional, got a little bit excited about forward momentum, got a little bit afraid of that pivot point, and that they've wiped it out with 2 onerous contract extensions that could wind up not only hurting them on the field year by year, but greatly handicap their ability to pivot and to change the direction while keeping a quality product in the field. And obviously, I'm talking about Manny Machado. All right? Let's start with Manny Machado. In February, Manny Machado showed up in Peoria coming off of a second-place MVP season, and he swung his big dick, man. He did what he had to do as a player. He said, hey, look, I'm Manny Machado. I'm great. I've been great for the Padres. And at the end of this year, I'm opting out, baby. I'm opting out. And we all got scared. Oh my God, what if this is the cloud that hangs over the Padres all year long? That Manny is going to opt out. And this might be Manny's last year. And everyone's asking questions every game. Every road, baseball columnist is asking Manny if he's going to opt out, and it's going to be a problem all year. Could you imagine, guys? And by the way, I want to throw, as we enter this discussion, I want to dig all the way in. I want to get ankle deep in this discussion. But if the Padres hadn't extended Manny, and Manny was hitting as shitty as he is, and the team was 3 under 500, you know that people would be throwing out the narrative, the Padres are bad because they didn't extend Manny. The Padres are bad because Manny has no contract extension, because it's a distraction to the clubhouse. It's affecting Manny's performance. You can't say any of that now. They gave him the bag, and he is playing so badly, and he is not inspiring this club right now. And there are 11 years to follow for Manny Machado with an absolute no trade clause. He is no trade, no cut, no going nowhere. All right. And I'm concerned because I remember when the Angels signed Albert Pujols, it was so damn exciting. And people were like, at the time, people were like, well, yeah, 5 years into this contract is probably not going to look good, but damn, those 5 years are going to be so damn good. And then in the first year, at about this time of the year, you were watching the Angels and you're like, oh, they didn't really get Albert Pujols. Oh, they got a player, but it's not that. And they regretted that contract in year 1. And then they regretted it for 9 years to follow. And I don't want to be that man. But right now, today, that's my number one concern, is that they've hooked themselves to an albatross that's going to be a $35 million problem for 10 years to come. And I don't want that to be anything near the case. But dagnabbit, that's my number one concern right now.
Sure, and it's interesting that, we go to A.J. Preller and his circle of yes man. A.J. Preller's not the one who gave Manny that contract.
Yeah, Seidler said it was his number one priority to keep Manny. But I just feel like, Raphie, the Padres had an opportunity. Like, we're going to go get Ohtani. If you let Manny go, if you let Manny go. But they've tied themselves in now. They're locked in.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's like as long as again, it's a $35 million a year problem theoretically if Manny keeps playing like this. But if the spigot never shuts off and Peter Seidler wants to keep writing checks, obviously there is a certain limit to that. Like he doesn't have the GDP of countries, but but he could continue to theoretically spend money. Um, I'm going to be honest. I'm a little surprised that you invoke the Albert Pujols contract this early. That's quite a statement, but
I didn't expect
understand.
to.
I understand your concern, and by the way, we should say, uh, Fangraphs, when this contract was signed, was like, hey, the math doesn't add up on this thing, and specifically, they were saying that the bat speed hit tool is not one that ages well, and that was certainly the case with Albert Pujols as well. So I don't think it's necessarily an outrageous comparison to make. But just to kind of respond to something that you had said, Chris, it was Peter Seidler who's going to spend the money. So if it's up to Peter Seidler to spend that money, he's going to say whatever he wants. But it's still AJ's job to counsel him. And I don't think that AJ at all was like someone who had any trepidation about. He's never been someone who's been, I think,
there was reporting that there were voices within the organization that did not agree with the contract.
But who was it? I mean, we don't know. Yeah. Is that AJ? Is it Josh Stein? Who is
exactly? That's we don't vague. Know. But that's kind of what it goes back to. AJ isn't number one. Peter Seidler's number one. So that's where the buck stops.
That's true. That's definitely true. But AJ is the one that's going to pay the price if it doesn't work
exactly.
out. Yes. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yes.
So
that is. Go ahead, Chris.
My concern, I'll give my number on Manny Machado, Craig, and it's a 4. He's playing worse than he ever has, in a 10-year career that's on a Hall of Fame trajectory. So if you poo-poo Pat, if you dismiss it, citing the hit tool and the bat speed of a 31-year-old third baseman that's been throwing his body around for 15 years, yeah, I'm medium for you there. I'm a moderate oven on that one, Craig.
Well, we're into it now. What's your number then, Rafe? I'm going to say 5. I'm going to just say 5. What's your number?
I would be closer to Chris. I think I'm at a 4. I mean, like, again, it's like Nolan Arenado is off to a 95 WRC plus start. I don't think that's who Nolan Arenado is. I don't think he's going to be like this forever. And I don't think that Manny is going to be like this forever. If you're asking me, like, am I worried that he's not going to play up to his contract? My answer is 10 out of 10. I don't think he's going to play up to that contract. I don't think that it's physically possible for him to. He would have to be putting up like 2 to 3 WAR a year as a 41-year-old. It's a lot that's going to take for him. We're paying a huge premium for his services because he's the face of the franchise. Ostensibly, he's the captain, like everything like that. And I think my concern right now is specifically like he's the captain, he's the tone setter. That is part of the reason that we are paying him the premium. So you want him to kind of have that position when he's speaking to the media and like doing everything like that. And he's going to be the face for better or worse. And so if things are business as usual, when things are certainly not, that's a concern for me because he's going to be the one setting the tone going forward. So I'd put it at a 4, long term.
All right. I'm sorry to, but I'm going to nominate another one. Okay. Because this is it's right in theme. And I want to get right to the next guy on the concernometer, Jake Cronenworth. Because this is part and parcel with what I'm talking about. The Padres didn't have to extend Manny Machado. They could have played it out. There had to have been a strategic discussion that talked about the strategy of playing it out, letting Manny set his final value by adding this year's stats into the final bucket, and then putting it on the market and seeing whether indeed he was going to leave and tear up 150 to get another deal somewhere else, or whether he was going to come back to the Padres one way or another. They could have played it out. They chose to make this decision. They felt there was risk in not doing that. They made their call. I understand it was a big ticket decision. there was no world in which the Padres had to extend Jake Cronenworth.
Mm-hmm.
There was no universe in which it was a pressing matter. And in fact, for a team that has increasingly limited options in terms of how it could possibly add someone new to the team, how it could possibly change the chemistry of the team, they didn't build ever thinking about anything but best case scenario for this 2023 Padre team. And so they locked themselves into a number of positions. And Jake Cronenworth, who it must always be reminded is way older than you think, is playing his age 29 season right now. Okay? Jake Cronenworth's gotten worse every year of his big league career. And I know there's time to turn it around. But Jake Cronenworth's average has gone from 285 to 266 to 239 to 216. His on-base percentage has gone from 354 to 340 to 332 to 327. His slugging has gone from 477 to 460 to 390 to 367. This train's going in one direction. He's gotten worse every year in the big leagues. And having seen 3 years of those numbers, the Padres gave him a 7-year contract that extends him to age 36. And now in his age 29 season, Jake Cronenworth is our locked-in first baseman. Locked in. You can't even move him to second base. There's no one else to put at first base. And he's hitting 215. He is playing the worst baseball of his career. And we decided to lock into the next 7 years of that. Like, maybe his age 35 season will be what he might be out of baseball in 2 years if it keeps going like this. Concernometer. Give me a number on Jake Cronenworth.
2. You know why? Because this is actually a place where the Padres can easily correct. Just move him back to second base. And everything works out. If he was putting up his, I'm trying to go back as fast as I can to the Padres team page right now. But we talked about this when we were talking about him earlier in the episode. Ha-Seong Kim, for instance, has a 94 WRC plus this season. Jake Cronenworth has a 97 WRC plus this season. Ha-Seong Kim has put up 0.7 WAR, which will pace out to about 3 WAR. That's, pretty solid. It's good. Jake Cronenworth has put up 0.3. That's the effect. That's going to pace out to 1.2 WAR in the year, which is bad. That being said, Jake Cronenworth's average annual value is in the, I don't have the top of my head, $11 to $12 million range, something like that, where a win on the open market is going to go for somewhere between $9 and $10 million. So over the course of the deal, as long as he's putting up a couple WAR in the first few years of the deal, he's going to be at least competitive to playing up to it. So if you're talking about value, like that part of it is I'm not concerned about. What I am concerned about is that it's going to spoil Jackson Merrill's chances to contribute to the Padres in the future, because I think that Ha-Seong Kim's gone, but if they're going to bring Jackson Merrill onto the Padres, Xander Bogaerts is playing shortstop. So there's one place for him to play. It's second base. And that's a place where you could get cheap production. And if you're going to put him at second base, that means you're going to keep Jake Cronenworth at first base. And if you're keeping Jake Cronenworth at first base, then you're zapping all of his value. Now, the interesting thing about Jake Cronenworth is that his no trade clause is only like 8 teams, and they're all bad teams. So we might say, hey, we don't like Jake Cronenworth playing first base for us, but he'd be great on your team as a second baseman, and he's locked in at a cost-controlled place. So there are avenues for the Padres to rectify this if it doesn't go their way. I just think that they're playing him in the worst possible spot at the worst possible time in his career. So my concerno level is a 2.
2, Chris.
Well, here, Raphie, he set his up with like certain conditions. And my condition's going to be they keep him on the team playing first base, and then it's a friggin' 7. And like, yeah, sure, that gets docked because of the 8-team no trade clause. I've been saying you can't go back on Twitter because I deleted all that shit. But I've been saying they should trade Jake Cronenworth for over a year and a half now. His value's been crazy high. He's got 2 All-Star games, which still means something, unlike, Golden Gloves or anything like that. He has value. And when he signed that contract, because it was a fairly team-friendly contract, his value went up.
Yeah.
That's something you can move off of. You have 17 shortstops on your team and in your system. Middle infielders, let's call them, because that's what Ha-Seong Kim is. And it's at a 7 because Jake Cronenworth is not a first baseman. He's not a first baseman. He's not a major league first baseman. And if he's playing first base for the San Diego Padres next 3-4 years, they're going to suck a little bit. I don't think they have no options. Like you say, this is a team that's a position that you can put a guy in. Jesus Aguilar didn't have a job until 4 weeks before the season. Alfonso Rivas is tearing it up at AAA. They're guys, there's big boys with muscles and good eye-hand coordination playing first base all around the world. And you can find somebody for it. So it's a 7 if they view Jake Cronenworth as a permanent fixture in a San Diego Padres uniform.
Yeah, and I'm going to go 5.5. It's over 5 for me because I believe that the momentum is to head toward that 7. It's to keep him at first base. They just signed him to an extension. I don't believe that they are thinking about trading Jake Cronenworth. But in reality, they should have traded Jake Cronenworth in the winter.
Trade, 30 days of Crone trades,
right.
Baby.
Yeah, that was the opportunity. But again, didn't want to stop forward momentum. You're selling out your season tickets. Everyone's talking about the Padres. And I think that mindset got this front office in a little bit of trouble. Rafe, I know you need to go pretty soon. So I want to give you an opportunity to nominate a Concernometer, and also if you have any short-term solutions to offer.
Nominate a Concernometer in the sense of like just any quick other things I'm concerned about, or
yeah.
There's just 2 other things that I have really quickly. One is that we consciously make the choice to not improve at catcher because of stubbornness and veteran grit or whatever. I don't know. Like that's number one thing, because it's clearly as we've talked about at length, the number one spot we can improve. And something I'll pull out from the beginning of the season. It's a prediction that I'm not excited about being correct about, but revenge of the toe. Joe Musgrove, like pushing himself in weird hyperbaric chambers and doing all this stuff in the name of just trying to get back as soon as possible. Guys, he's been below replacement level this year. And I know there's a Mexico City start in there, but he has not looked like himself. And even looking at the peripherals, like things are not great. So those are my 2 biggest concerns right now is catcher and Mr. Musgrove.
Okay. I'd like to offer a chance. What do you do, right? Oh, you guys have done nothing but complain. It's been an hour and 18 minutes. What do you do? What do you do to fix anything? It's very hard. And I think that's why I listed the 2 concerns I had at the top of my list. When you box in a team with a ton of extensions and with a bunch of veteran stars, basically the best thing, your number one thing to do is to ask them to play better. Please kindly stop sucking so hard and play better. But there are spots on this roster that are absolute dead spots. So I'm going to offer one simple, concrete suggestion to marginally improve the San Diego Padres. Rougned Odor should have been DFA'd the day he arrived in camp. Rougned Odor should be DFA'd, and the Padres should purchase the contract of veteran infielder Jose Iglesias from AAA El Paso. Jose Iglesias is in the Padres system right now. Jose Iglesias has been a very good defensive player his entire career. When you play him at shortstop, I'm talking about the Iglesias that used to be the Rockies and the Red Sox shortstop. Okay? He's been good as recently as last season when he hit 292 for the Colorado Rockies in 467 plate appearances. Okay? In Baltimore, in the COVID year, he hit 377. The year before that in Cincinnati, he hit 288. He's a very good defensive shortstop that can also play second base. And what I'm saying is he's not a complete piece of crap, which is what Rougned Odor is, the worst player in baseball. This is easy. Call up Jose Iglesias. Let him be the veteran infielder backup guy that you want, and he won't throw away a double play ball thinking he's Derek Jeter doing jump throws off the top of the bag, and he'll probably hit 260 with singles, which is better than 090 with one home run. Call up Iglesias. Do it today.
Want to add anything, Rafe? Got it. I don't really see where you're going with this one there, Craig. I don't think we need more veteran savvy. I'd much rather see a younger Brandon Dixon come up and get reps.
He can't play second base.
Well, I mean, better. Like, we already got a mainstay second baseman, is he not? Isn't he a third baseman, second baseman, first baseman?
No, Iglesias is an infielder. He's a shortstop, second baseman. But
yeah, but
like, Odor, I'm just taking replace Odor. Odor.
I know that, but I just don't think we need another savvy veteran. Like, I'd rather see a younger guy come up, or even Batten. He can play second base, or Jake Cronenworth can play second base, and you can pull up Rivas. I'm just kind of done with where they're gonna do something for us that they're not. Jose Iglesias isn't playing for a Major League Baseball team for a reason.
He's a career 280 hitter. 280.
He's 29
Our whole
years
team
old,
is hitting 200. He's a career 280 hitter. I'll take him off the bench over Odor every day of the week.
Yeah, sure. Like anybody over Odor at this point, man. I don't feel the need for more reclamation projects on the Padres. I'd rather see them give a kid a shot.
Is Tim Lopes going to come up to the Padres and hit 270?
Yeah, Tim Lopes. Like, why not? Yeah, I forgot about him. Like, why not him over Iglesias?
Because there's no loss. We're talking about replacement players, man. This is literally us on the fantasy roster going down to page 3, clicking next 25, and then going, well, who do we want out of this thing? Iglesias is fine. He's way better than Rugi Odor. And I'll say another one. Go get a catcher. Go trade for a catcher. Now's the time. Make the Grandal deal. Make a deal. Change those two things. Make 2 little marginal improvements at the bottom of the roster. It could have a massive knock-on effect. It's not going to change everything, but just putting a little bit of on-base percentage in 8-9 is going to allow Tatis and Machado and Soto to get hits and have those hits drive in runners.
You know what I saw in the Athletics reporting that I hadn't seen yet, that I had long suspected, was that the Padres were in on the Sean Murphy sweepstakes. And I would have to guess, because he doesn't play for the Padres, that the asking price was Jackson Merrill. And they didn't do it. In which case, you had too much faith in Austin Nola, bro.
Yeah. I mean, it's time. It's time to make these changes. It's no longer time to goof around with your opening day roster and go, well, that's fine. We've got Rougned Odor and we've got Austin Nola and Brett Sullivan's his backup, and we're okay because we've got so many stars on our team. You're not okay. You're 3 games under. You're 7 games out. You got to get rid of the dead weight. And if it's not Iglesias and it's someone else, fine. But get rid of the dead weight. I bring up Iglesias because literally nobody's talking about him, and he's actually a pretty decent and underrated ball player, and he's in our system. So all it would take is just going, okay, you're up, and he's up. And this is the very last one, and then I know we got to go. Last concernometer, the NL West concernometer.
That they're winning it?
That the ability to win the NL West.
9. Only 10 because, it's not a 10. Only because Fernando Tatis Jr. and Juan Soto and Manny Machado and Xander Bogaerts play for the San Diego Padres.
Yeah.
But it's a 9. The math sucks. The Dodgers, I don't think it's memes why the Dodgers own the Padres. I think it's because the Dodgers have owned the Padres for, an adolescent's lifetime. We beat them in the NLDS. We can beat them in the NLDS again, but it sucks that that's the road we're trying to travel, man. I wanted 99 games. I wanted the Dodgers looking up. That is the shift that was desired, and it's at a 9 because I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I'll just quickly agree and say I don't think it's going to happen. We talked about this before the weekend. A sweep seriously endangers the prospects of the Padres winning the division. Our odds on Fangraphs are now down to 14% that we win the NL West. So that's bad. And, if you want to talk about the things that keep me up at night about this team, one of the worst case scenarios that we've talked about for this window that we're in is that we're like the mid 2010s Pirates, where we have a lot of promise, and then we go to the wild card and we fizzle out. And if we're not winning the division, it automatically means we have to roll the dice one more time in the wild card round every year. And that's going to sincerely hamper the odds that we make it to the World Series, win the World Series, everything like that. And that bears out, we still have like a 68% chance to make the playoffs, I think, on Fangraphs. So still like a very solid chance, but our World Series odds have been cut almost in half. And that's a product of the fact that they don't think we're going to win the division, and therefore we have a much lower likelihood to make it further in the playoffs. So 9, concerned about the division.
Okay, well then we just sweep it. It's 9-9-9. It's a set of 9s. Yeah, I think all of us consider the West not out of reach, but really looking bad. Looking like Donald Trump's chances in downtown Milwaukee if you don't set a voting booth on fire.
There it is. Had to get the Succession reference in.
Got snuck in. Yeah. Shout out to the Menconites out there. Please stop listening to our show if you exist. All right. Any parting words, gentlemen?
Go Padres.
Go Padres.
I like what they said. Thanks for listening to the Padres Hot Tub. Go Padres.